Well, you don't get to see that often. Venus and Mercury, all the inner planets up there hanging low in the southwest sky. Let me show you how to check that out. Let me pull up the animation. And there you go. That's how to look at Mercury. This, you can see the sun slightly to the left and below. And when it falls below the horizon, like you see right here, then Mercury kind of follows along. And it's about maybe 10 or 20 degrees above the horizon. So you'll see that to the southwest, pretty much no matter where you are. But if you're up in the northern latitudes like Minnesota or New Hampshire, it may be a little bit low on your horizon there. Here's the picture. We had kind of a cold day here in Texas. I think it got down to about 59 here in my place, and I recorded a low of 27. So we had 20s all the way down to about Waco and San Angelo. And even out east, you can see the 20, well, we'll say the 30 line goes all the way towards Atlanta and then towards South Carolina. So not an excessively cold outbreak, but definitely the coldest one of the season so far. Michael says, getting the first 20s tonight. Let me know where you are, Michael. And you can see a lot of below zeros, too, up in the northern plains. This is where the cold air is coming from. Minus 20 up in Saskatchewan, and there's still quite a bit of it up there. Southern New Hampshire for Mark there. Okay. Why are we getting all this cold air? Obviously, we've got a lot of cold Canadian highs moving southward. And let me do this frontal analysis. You're probably used to the drill here. We're looking at, not thickness, but yeah, we are looking at thickness in isobars. So isobars are going to be the black lines. Thickness are going to be the red and blue lines. And the blue is basically below freezing frozen precipitation level, 540 decameters. And the red, we should get liquid precipitation. So we draw the fronts out like that all the way down to the Gulf. And then you can see we pick up a little bit of that packing up north, not so much down south. So it looks like maybe the air mass thins out a little bit and we get a little bit of a curvature to the north. Then you can see there's not a whole lot of thickness packing in California. But you go up to Oregon and we've got 3 lines there and a 4th one just north of Portland. So we may have a warm front about like that. So this is kind of the polar frontal boundary, and this part will kind of be washed out due to high pressure sometimes, but other times you might be able to resolve that. Michael is in Georgia, yeah. Had the 20 line, or the 20s to 30s line just south of Atlanta there. And then you can see to the north the source of all the polar air. So we've got 1036 millibars, and let me trace out that isobar. This is 1036 millibars. Actually, that goes further south. So this represents a large area of cold air up to the north. And we can also track that with the thickness lines. This is pretty much the center of the deepest, richest polar air. And this is a little chunk, and the rest of it is further up north. It looks like there's some more up near the Canadian high Arctic. So this is the center of the Canadian air. It's still up to the north, so we're not quite done with this yet. And for an explanation of why we have this in place, this is the hemispheric 300 millibar chart. Probably looks a little bit complicated, but North America is down here, Greenland is right here, and the North Pole located about there. And so what's important here is this little stretch of the polar front jet. That's kicking some polar air from the Canadian high Arctic and the ice cap southward. Just like that. And that tends to be a pretty common pattern with these cold air outbreaks. And I'll show you a couple more. I don't know how many of you remember 1996 in February. We had the coldest temperature in probably the past 25 or 30 years in Minnesota. Let me just show you some of the temperatures we had. February 2nd was probably the coldest day of the season. I'll zoom in on this little tiny chart here. This shows you the highs and lows for February 2nd of 1996. Let me get that centered perfectly there. Okay. So you see the high temperature in Minneapolis was minus 12. We had a low of minus 45 at the reporting station at International Falls. And Tower, Minnesota got down to minus 60, and that set an all-time record low for Minnesota. So a lot of records being broken. Most of the cold air at the time was banked up pretty far to the north, but that spread southward over the next day or so. So let me show you the pattern that kind of led to that. And you might find some similarities with this and the weather we have right now. I'm not saying we're going to get an Arctic outbreak, an extreme Arctic outbreak or anything like that, but you'll probably see some similarities to the cold weather that's coming down. So you see January 29th, got a Arctic front moving south, and you can see high pressure across Saskatchewan and Alberta. That's kind of where we see high pressure right now. So we move that forward, and you can see it shifting southward. And there's January 31st, and then even more Arctic air comes down behind it. This is kind of a reinforcing shot. And then February 2nd, that's the coldest day of the year. And the first front is all the way down to the Gulf. Kind of looks like the position that we've had over the past couple of days. So there are some resemblances to what we have right now. It's just that the cold air is not as severe. Then let's look at the upper air patterns. Let me back it up to January 29th. And I'll zoom in on this chart real quick. So this is the 500 millibar chart. It's going to be fairly similar to the jet stream chart. And you can see we've got flow from the north aloft. So that's very important with these cold air outbreaks. This particular outbreak, you can see the jet going from western Northwest Territories down to British Columbia, and another segment kind of going like that. So that's enough to dislodge some polar air and send that southward down the plains. So over the next couple of days, so we have that, and you can see 65 knots at 500 millibars coming down. And some more 60 knot winds coming down, turning a little bit, it's kind of backing a little bit. And now we see the kind of like the polar vortex centered over Ontario. So if the media was covering this right now, they would probably call this the polar vortex storm. There's nothing unusual about the polar vortex. It's kind of a seasonal large upper level low. It's usually parked out over Baffin Island, but sometimes it moves southward. There you go. And then February 2nd, we looked like this. So that northerly flow is really the key. And I'll show you one more Arctic outbreak. This is December 1990. This set some of the coldest all-time records for Oregon and Idaho in this area. So this went a little bit further west. And this was the progression. You can see a large high centered way off to the left in British Columbia. So actually the bulk of the cold air went across the mountains, and as you might guess, it was a very deep air mass. And the pattern aloft was a little bit different. I'm going to zoom in on that upper air map and take it back again. Okay, you probably notice a little bit of a difference here. Instead of the jet stream coming down south like that, it's actually kind of north-northeasterly. So when we have kind of a north-northeast pattern across British Columbia, that'll probably send some polar air into the west if it's deep enough. So when you're looking at a lot of long-wave troughing in the central U.S., you have to kind of look for that expansion of low pressure out in the western U.S., and that can help send some Arctic air out that way. Okay, so that's what happened way back in time. I don't remember really any other polar outbreaks that were that strong since 1996. I know we had a big one in 2014, like the first or second week of January. And Wikipedia lists a bunch, but I don't really remember all of them. So let me take a look at this high pressure area. We're going to do something different. You remember yesterday we were looking at the cross sections. We did a cross section from south to north. Let's do that with soundings. We'll go from maybe Corpus Christi and go north up the plains, and you can see that we're going from slightly warmer air kind of on the fringes of this front all the way up into the core of the polar air over northern Saskatchewan. So let's do that. Pull up the Corpus Christi sounding. And you don't have to know how to analyze this, just keep in mind that this line is the observed temperature, and then there are coordinates temperature that way. So as you go to the right, you have increasing temperature, and then you go up, you have increasing pressure, or I'm sorry, decreasing pressure or increasing height. So this is telling us, so it looks like we probably have a frontal inversion either down here or up here. So this is about 10,000 feet high, and this other one, that's about 3,000 feet high. So some of those clouds that you saw on the opening sequence, that was probably some moisture that was trapped in this inversion layer. Let's go up north. Let's go up to Fort Worth. That's a little bit closer to us because we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Pretty similar picture. Looks like the top of that cold pool is up at about 10,000 feet still. We'll go further north up to, how about Springfield, Missouri. Pretty similar picture. Looks like a little bit deeper, maybe up to about 11,000. And you can see where those two lines come together. This is moisture, this is temperature, and you can see when they come close together, that's high relative humidity and a good chance of clouds at that level. So that's some stratocumulus right there underneath the inversion at about 8,000 or 9,000 feet. Go a little bit further north to Topeka. So we're driving northward, and it's getting colder outside. And we come up with this. Still looks like it's topped out at about 11,000 feet. Go up to Omaha. Looks like maybe it's a little bit shallower as we go north. It's probably lost some definition now that the main blast of cold air has moved to the east. Then we have a change there at Minneapolis, and let me try going to Rapid City and see what's going on. We either have a frontal inversion here. I can't really tell where the air mass tops out. This is where cross sections become very important. So you can see I'm kind of picking through these soundings and trying to build an idea of how deep the air mass is. This looks like the top of the frontal inversion in Lincoln, Illinois. That's up at about 18,000 feet. And what's supposed to happen is you go further north, eventually that cold air mass kind of wraps into the tropopause. And then you're going to end up with something like this as you go up to International Falls. Some colder air down here, and then up here, the top of the main cold air mass. And then you go up to the core of the Arctic air. And very cold here, and strongly cold down here. And see, we're starting to get into the Arctic air. And we're getting way over to the left. Let me find a good example of Arctic air. You can get some pretty impressive low-level inversions, and normally with Arctic air they're very, very shallow. Thought I saw one earlier. If not, we'll skip it. It had a pretty extreme inversion. Yeah, see that right there. way off to the left. So we start out at about minus 37 Celsius near the ground, and then it increases with height to where only 2,000 feet off the ground, or maybe 3,000, it warms up to minus 16 Celsius. So this is pretty much all polar air, and what's underneath is what's considered Arctic air. That's kind of trapped beneath there. And a lot of times that'll be covered by an inversion that's capped with stratus. And the stratus will radiate heat into space and bring the temperatures down further. So it's kind of a cycle that kind of keeps the Arctic air getting colder and colder until we have a storm system blow through, and then it kind of mixes everything up. There's some of that northerly wind right there. So that's a little bit of 3D analysis, doing our little tour there of North America. Okay, I think we're about ready to head into the forecast. Let me get my maps all fixed here because I've been opening charts and moving from one to another. All right, so this is the picture right now. And before I start that, I'll just check in and chat real quick and say hello to everybody. Everardo Munoz, hi Tim, how was your day? Ready for the weekend? Yeah, ready for the weekend for sure. Although usually I work every day. I hate to say that. Wind chill, 12 degrees from Mark. All right, so let's head into our forecast. There's high pressure, and you can see there's a big ridge across the central plains right there. And now we're starting to get into a warm air advection pattern because the gradient is coming from the south over Texas. And where the thickness lines and the isobars form boxes, like right here, you can kind of consider that an area of warm air advection. And basically, the smaller the box, the stronger the advection. And this is warm air advection because the gradient is the gradient is going from south to north. If it's going the other way, like out here, that's going to be cold air advection. So warm air advection will eventually lead to upper level lift and clouds. So we're going to watch for that over the next couple of days. May have some downslope here that may keep that from happening. So for tomorrow's webcast, it's going to look like this. We're going to have some cyclogenesis. That's the Pacific system coming inland, and that's going to take aim on Chicago. You can see a little bit of lee side trough in Colorado. Then when we do the webcast on Sunday, that's going to move eastward. And now we're going to have a front that looks kind of like that, kind of a weak front. So best snow potential is going to be in this area. It's going to be kind of to the left of the track of the surface low and basically to the north right here. So probably some good snows right there near Milwaukee and across to Grand Rapids. So here's an area of high pressure, and here's the next front coming down. So when we do the webcast on Monday, here's the picture for that. Another blob of cold air coming southward. Then for Tuesday, we're looking at this, starting to sink southward into Texas. So we'll probably start seeing a change here around midweek. You can see on Wednesday, we've got some of that polar air sinking southward. So there it is coming south, and a little bit of snow being painted across the Ohio River Valley. And then the next day, for Thursday, that's going to push all the way through the southern plains and the southeast U.S. So going to be very cold there for Georgia next Friday, about a week from now. Then for Saturday, the big old mass of high pressure moves in. The system that we had in the southeast U.S. moves up the coast. So maybe a little bit of a coastal storm here. Continued warm air advection in Texas. For Saturday, just more of the same. Starting to develop some warm air advection out here, so things should start warming up for Texas and Oklahoma. But we have another system all lined up right here. And there it goes. It makes its move across the central plains on Monday. Let's see, where is that exactly? Yeah, it looks like it's still not quite across the plains yet, but that should get out there by Monday. So there it goes right there. So these are going to be some fast-moving storms with fast-moving cold air outbreaks behind them. Then kind of a period of calm weather, and then our next big Arctic outbreak comes through. This is 300 hours out, so this is kind of hypothetical at this point, but this is on the 22nd, moving south with a little bit of rain and snow. You can see that coming together right there on the 23rd. Another Pacific system comes through. And we're starting to kind of paint a picture of what's going to happen around Christmas. Not sure about the very tight details, but the big picture is it looks like it wants to bring some polar air southward. Now the model does have, GFS does have a cold bias, so I would take this with a grain of salt, but we'll watch for this possibility of cold air on Christmas. Maybe it'll back off from that. We will see. Okay, guys, I think that's probably it for me. I appreciate you watching, and let me check our own chat and see if there's any questions or anything. 68 inches of snow from that storm. I'm not sure which one it is. The red in Indiana, that's probably going to be freezing rain. I'm not exactly sure their color scheme. Yeah, off to the bottom, yeah, the red ones are freezing precipitation here. Okay, well, I hope you all have a good weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow at the usual time. Thanks for watching.